The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Man Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Of course, I'm your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So the Washington Commanders have made a move concurrent with the move to release Brandon McManus. That move was made a couple of days ago. I can't say that I saw it coming necessarily. I told you guys, had they worked out kickers last week, then I could see the writing on the wall. They did nothing last week. They actually did exactly what they said they were going to do in their press release, which was, hey, we're going to assess the situation, kind of take a step back, see what's going on, and then we will make a move after we've gathered all the information. Well, essentially, they went about it as such. One, he's a kicker. Two, he's not our kicker, right? This is not a guy that's homegrown. This is not Tress Way getting into some, sticky situations and some murky waters where you can kind of say, hey, this is our guy. He's one of the best. Let's kind of take a step back and we know how this process works. If you're talented, you get more opportunities. If this were Justin Tucker we were talking about, if the Ravens had these same allegations levied against Justin Tucker, hey, wait a minute. Let's kind of calm down. Everybody settle down now, simmer down now, and let's kind of take a step back. This is Justin Tucker we're talking about here, right? So we're going to assess this situation. We're going to get all the details, all the particulars, make sure that everything here checks out. And then if something needs to be done, we'll do that. They would not have released Brandon McManus if his name was Justin Tucker, or if he had the kind of career that Justin Tucker, or was the same ilk of kicker that Justin Tucker is. But because Brandon McManus is, I don't want to call him a standard run-of-the-mill kicker, but he is an above-average NFL kicker, but those come a dime a dozen. You can find above-average kickers in the NFL. So signing to a one-year deal doesn't give you any guarantee, and it definitely doesn't allow you to be acting up in any manner, any way, shape, or form, whether it happened before you got here or not. And, I always look at things because I'm still trying to figure out how this group operates. And I always compare the last group to this group. And I can tell you this much. The last group had no margin for error. So soon as this news hit, he would have been cut immediately, right? Brandon McManus would have been cut the day that this dropped. I think it dropped last Monday. McManus would have been cut last Monday. Soon as this hit the airwaves, he would have been cut. I think it happened on Memorial Day weekend on that Monday, if I'm not mistaken. He'd have been cut that Monday, if not that Tuesday. So they let it linger for a little while they gathered all the information, which is what they said they were going to do. And surprisingly, at least to me, they didn't bring in any kickers for a workout. But here's the advantage that they have. One, they weren't at practice, which doesn't really matter anyway. Two, they're not kicking a field goal that matters for the next 2.5 months. So they're not under any kind of stress or, there's no urgency necessary. So them bringing in kickers didn't alter their plan at all. We could be without a kicker because, again, we're not playing any games where they're actually taking score for at least the next 2.5 months. So they didn't have a kicker actively on the 90-man roster when they released Brandon McManus. And they were like, yeah, we'll find one. Don't worry about it. And that they have. And we kind of figured, because where we are in the season, the pool of kickers wasn't going to be that great. Some teams have 2 or 3 kickers on their roster right now as they're going to go to camp and compete. So even the guys that aren't going to be on NFL rosters are on a roster right now. So there's nothing really out there to snatch up. So you knew you were going to have to go to the UFL route to find a kicker that was going to be able to come in here and at least give you someone that you can have once you head to camp. Now, I will tell you that the kicker they brought in, Ramiz Ahmed from the UFL, who was just released on the 28th of May, who has been around for a while now, was a walk-on kicker at Nevada, then got into the NFL as an undrafted kicker with the Bears, was in their camp in 2020 and competed with Eddie Piñeiro for that position, that kicker's job. And Piñeiro obviously won. And then, you know, he resurfaced in the USFL in 2022, made the longest kick in the USFL's history at that point, 61 yards, and was the kicker of the week and all of that good stuff. Ended up back in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers last season, you know, platooning back and forth, or 2 seasons ago, rather, platooning back and forth as their kickoff specialist. He was never, brought in and designated to be the actual field goal kicker. He was there to be a kickoff specialist. He's got a big leg, okay? Obviously, the 61-yarder is proof of that. So he's got a big leg. That's one of his calling cards. I don't know if the accuracy is going to be good enough to have him stick as an everyday NFL place kicker, which is why I'm not sure that this is the end-all, be-all decision for Washington here. This is just a guy that they bring in here so that they have a body on the roster actively as a place kicker. I do think there will be more competition coming. I do think NFL teams will be making moves to cut kickers that Washington will be interested in. And I do expect them to add another kicker at some point to compete with Ahmed. This is not okay, we got our kicker, let's move on. This is a non-issue. No, we need to fix this because, again, if we're going to be the team that we're hoping we can be and surprise people, the kicker position needs to be solidified. We can't have this back and forth jumping around with kickers. We've done this before. It never ends well. We're not good enough right now. We're not a team that scores 31 points a game. So we're not in a position where it won't come down to a missed extra point or a missed field goal or a made field goal or a made extra point. We can't say that our games won't come down to that. As of right now, you've got a rookie quarterback, brand new offense, brand new defense. Don't really know what's going to be become of this team, whether they're going to be leaning heavily on their defense or the offense is going to be better than we think, or the offense is going to be like it has been in the past here of recent note, and that's lackluster and not scoring enough points on a weekly basis. And because of that, you have to assume that the place kicking situation needs to be in proper order in order for this team to have any sort of success, whether that's an 8, 9, 10, 11 win season or whatever that looks like, whatever success looks like for you. In order for that to be attained, this place kicking situation needs to be rectified. I'm not telling you that Ramiz Ahmed is the end all be all, but I'm not telling you that he won't ultimately win this job. They brought him in because they think he has some potential, but that's all he has right now. And he doesn't have any NFL experience to stand on. There isn't a big enough sample size of him kicking at a professional level. If you want to look at his USFL career, go right ahead, knock yourself out. He was solid in that role. He was not great. And so, again, if they have their choice between an unproven USFL / UFL commodity versus a proven NFL commodity, they're probably going to go with the proven NFL commodity. And some guys are going to get cut as we get into training camp and teams get comfortable with their kicking situation. I say middle of August or so, you're going to see some kickers shake free. And unlike a quarterback or a receiver or a tight end or a corner or a linebacker or any of the other positions that would need time to mesh and gel with their teammates, it's a kicker. Now, yes, a place kicker does need time to get into a rhythm with the holder and the snapper and how does he like the ball held. But you can work on that very quickly and get into a rhythm with the guys that are currently there and have that situation be really good. All you got to do is tell the long snapper, hey, I like the ball tilted slightly to the left, laces out, and then you just work on that repetition and boom, you got it, right? This isn't a situation where he's got to come in, learn a playbook and all of that good stuff. So at the end of the day, I don't want to make too much of this because it is a place kicker. And as we saw, Washington discarded Brandon McManus like a place kicker because that's exactly what he is. But understanding what we all know, and if we've watched this team for any amount of time, we know that place kickers are important, especially when you don't score a lot of points. And we haven't scored a lot of points. So you need your place kicker to be a really good place kicker because you need all the points you can get. You can't afford to leave points out on the field. It's funny because I'm laughing at a lot of y'all. I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at you now because y'all didn't like Joey Slye. You wanted Joey gone. And now a lot of y'all are over here fiending for Joey, right? Hey, they need to bring Joey. No, don't ask for Joey now, okay? Don't ask for Joey Crack now when you had a chance to bring him back and you wanted no parts of him. We need to upgrade the kicker position. Well, they supposedly did that with Brandon McManus. He's no longer here. Now you can't have Joey back. He's on a roster right now. Whether he makes that roster or not is of no consequence. He's just not available. And so they had to go a different route. My guess is, and this is, we don't know, and I can't tell you, but my guess is that when it's all said and done, Ramiz Ahmed won't be our place kicker to start the season. That's my guess. If you wanted me to throw something out there, I don't know this. I'm rooting for the kid. He's never had a chance in the NFL. I would love him to come in and be similar to what the Cowboys got out of their kicker last year, where they got him from the USFL, and the dude just refused to miss kicks. He set the NFL record for the most kicks made consecutively from a field goal perspective to start an NFL career, right? Guy refused to miss kicks. I'd love it if we were able to unearth a gem like that, and who knows? Ramiz Ahmed could be exactly that. My guess is he's not. That's my guess. So I think they would love to go with a guy that has an NFL track record, that has experience kicking in the NFL. Because one thing about kickers, more so than skill position players and players that play other positions in it, like you can tell pretty much early on in a guy's career, after the first 3 to 4 years, what that guy's going to be in the league. He may be a solid contributor, role player, a guy that's a key cog on special teams and can contribute here and there when pressed into action in an offensive or defensive role. But for the most part, he carved out a niche for himself as a core special teamer and a guy that, in a pinch can contribute in whatever way you ask him to. But he's not a star, and he's not going to be a Pro Bowler or All-Pro or anything of that sort. With place kickers, they're really strange because you can get a guy early on in his career. He struggles with confidence, doesn't make kicks, but he's got a big leg. He's got talent, and he just kind of needs to find his way in the league. And once he settles in and he starts to get into a routine and he becomes more consistent, all of a sudden you got a All-Pro, Pro Bowl type kicker on your hands. And so you just never know when a guy's going to figure it out as a kicker, right? You would like to be that team that helps him. Our problem is we're always the team that guy comes into the league and struggles with. And then, 5 years down the road, when he's figured it out, he's kicking his ass off from some other team, i.e. Sean Sweezum, Graham Gano, Dustin Hopkins had his best year of his career with the Browns, a year or two ago. Like, that's always our fate. David Akers was first a Washington Redskin before he was then the Philadelphia Eagles kicker for like a decade plus. Like, we never find the guy when he's at the peak of his powers. We always get him when he's figuring shit out. So we got to cut him because you can't keep trotting a kicker out there that can't consistently make kicks. Then he figures it out like Graham Gano did with the Carolina Panthers and, slash the New York Giants. And now they got a kicker for a long time. Or Sean Sweezum with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now they got a kicker for a number of years. We never are the team where that guy figures it out. I would for once, just like to be the team that a kicker says, hey, I was hoping Joey Slye was that guy. That I really was banking on Joey Slye because we'd seen, the up and down. We'd seen that he could be really good. That first year we signed Joey at the back end of that 2021 season, Joey made all of his kicks. He was 13-13. And so I was thinking maybe he figured it out because we know he has a big leg from Carolina. We know in Houston and San Francisco and all those other stops he made, he's got a big leg. The question was always consistency and sometimes right place, wrong time, right? Or wrong place, wrong time, because they already had a kicker and that guy just happened to be injured. And so he wasn't going to take their job. He was just there to fill in until that guy came back. But you could see flashes and you were just hoping maybe this was the stop that Joey Slye could put it all together. And unfortunately, he was still inconsistent with us. But I wasn't ready to give up on him yet. But that's nor here nor there. He's gone. He's in New England now. We'll see if he makes that team. But all in all, we got to figure out the kicker situation, And I'm not opposed. Like, if we're going to have kicker woes and issues, I'd rather it be now and us figure it out now before we get to a point where we're ready to win. Because, a lot of you still think you have this idea of grandeur. And I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. And I hope you're right that this season is going to be a surprise to everyone. We're going to catch people off guard. We're going to win 10, 11 games. Excellent. I don't see that happening. And because I don't see that happening, because I expect this to be a year of development and growth and kind of figuring out who we are, establishing an identity, those type of things, the kicker's position could kind of fall into that, right? Where you're kind of figuring out what do you have at the place kicking position. I'd love to identify a kicker that we can grow with this season, even if it takes us going through some growing pains with 2 or 3 kickers to get to that guy, or we figure it out with the guy. He starts out a little rough, but he figures it out, and then we figure out, hey, we got ourselves a kicker, whatever the case may be. I'd like to get that rectified this year so that next year, because I think we're going to be ready to do damage next year if things go according to plan. This season, next year is the year where I'm starting to circle us on the calendar and say, hey, let's go start kicking some ass, in the words of Dan Quinn, right? Let's go kick ass. So if when you're ready to do that, you want all the pieces to be falling into place. Same can be said with place kicker. So if we're going to struggle with that, I'd rather it be this year than next year when I think we're going to be ready to compete and you got issues with kicking. So hopefully they figure this situation out. Ramiz Ahmed is going to get the first opportunity to be the place kicker here. And we'll see what he does with this opportunity. Sometimes all a guy needs is an opportunity. See if he takes full advantage of it or not. My guess is when teams start, because again, as I mentioned, there are teams with 3 kickers on their roster right now. Obviously, they're not going into the season with 3 place kickers. Teams are going to figure out, all right, this is the guy that's ahead. This is the guy we like the most. And you're going to start seeing teams trim off fat with kickers so they can add other players as they go to training camp. And, or as they get into camp and they have an injury here or there and they need to sign other guys, the kicker will probably be the first guy to get cut, if they got extra kickers. I think you're going to start to see that happen. And once that does, I think you're going to see Washington, among other teams, they're not going to be the only team, but you're going to see Washington among teams sniffing around some of these kickers that are available in the market. And they're going to have, I think a little bit of a camp battle here with the kicking situation. And we'll see who the best man is. And ultimately, I don't think that's going to be Ramiz Ahmed. But again, we will see. That said, Washington has 2 more OTA sessions, one of them involuntary, the other voluntary. This coming week, so tomorrow, is the last voluntary OTA. And then the last one, which is at the mid portion to the latter portion of next week, which is the final OTA of the offseason, that is mandatory. Okay, that is involuntary. You must show up to that, which we don't have any issues there because all the voluntary ones, we had 100% anyway. So that shouldn't be any issue now that Chase Young and Montez Sweat are no longer here. Everybody's showing up, right? So we don't have any issues with that. Dan Quinn is supposed to address the media tomorrow. Obviously, he'll be asked about the Brandon McManus situation. I think we'll get a stock answer there where he'll essentially tell us, hey, we did what we thought was in the best interest of the organization. We kind of delved into the situation and we took a look at what was going on, and we just thought it was better off if we moved on and kind of had a clean part, and gave everybody a chance to start anew, right? He'll give one of those sort of answers tomorrow, but we'll hear from him as we head into our final voluntary session of OTAs before heading into our final OTA next week, which will be involuntary. And then after that, you get that little hiatus, and then it'll be training camp time the next time the group gets together. So at the end of the day, looking forward to seeing what transpires this week with the OTAs, and then obviously kind of figuring out what the next step is going to be for this roster. Are they going to sign a left tackle at some point? Are they happy with what they have? We won't know until the pads go on, right? So stay tuned, stay tuned, because I don't think the roster is set. And again, we're at a position with our roster. We've had this conversation before. We're at a point with our roster now where we're not good enough as a complete team, right? We don't have enough good football players to where we shouldn't be looking at other teams' roster and scouring other teams' trash to see if we can find a treasure, right? We're not in that position. Teams like Baltimore and teams like the Chiefs aren't scouring your practice squad or your scrap heap to see if you cut somebody that they can add, because their roster is pretty much set. They don't need to add but one or two players. And usually they feel good about the guys that they've drafted, the guys that they're cutting, and guys that they have already in camp. They're not looking at your roster, scouring your trash heap to see if you got something. Where we're at in our development phase, we need to be looking for the next John Ridgeway. Oh, you cut a 6th-round pick? Let us get him, right? That's the kind of stuff we need to be on, and I expect us to be on. And so we'll see what this roster ultimately looks like once we get into camp and when teams start to disregard some of their players. I don't think we saw anything major happen June 1 post cuts. I don't think Washington had any major, opportunities present themselves. Again, the NFL has set it up now with the CBA where if you're a post June 1 cut rather, you can go and find employment, which we've seen. Like the 49ers designated Eric Armstead as a post-June 1 cut. And he went and signed with the Jets, his former defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh. But he still didn't come off the books until June 1. So while, once upon a time, you had to wait until June 1st for those guys to be released, and then you could pounce. Now these guys, the NFL and the CBA, and this is smart on the part of the Players Association, they have set it up to where, hey, let's let these guys go find work while the money still exists. Don't wait till the money dries up in June and then cut them loose and now hope they can find work and get the most bang for their buck. Let them go out there when the free agent market is hot, when the money is still there and everybody's looking to upgrade their roster, and let them maximize their contract potential. So the June 1 doesn't mean what it used to mean. Like there aren't any guys being cut that you didn't already know about. If I know that I'm cutting a guy post June 1, you already know that in February. You already know that in March. So nothing happened that's going to affect Washington. No tackles got released. What I was thinking was post draft, right? A team ended up with a tackle that they didn't expect themselves to get their hands on, and now a tackle becomes expendable. We didn't see that. And what's going to make things a little bit tougher for a team like Washington is now with the new rules set up post-COVID, where teams don't have to cut down their 90-man roster until after the final preseason game. You're not going to have the opportunity. Once upon a time when it was a cut after each preseason game, hey, that first round of cuts may have produced a guy that you like, and you can bring him into the fold, and he can still be a part of your camp and into the preseason, and you can figure out if this is a guy that can stick with my roster. Now, you go through all 3 preseason games, and then those cuts happen, and you don't really have a time to acclimate a guy to your system, and so you're really not going to be able to sign a guy that can come in and impact. You may be able to sign a guy that can provide you with depth, or he may end up being normally, if I have a chance to choose between the team that I was with on their practice squad or somebody else's practice squad, I'm going to choose the team that I was with because they know me, they gave me an opportunity. Unless something went wrong there, I felt mistreated, or I felt like I'm not going to get the opportunity. It's just too much depth in front of me. I'm going to go somewhere else where I feel like there's a better opportunity for me to potentially get on the field. Usually players are going to choose the team that they got cut by. So I said all of that to say this. Those of you looking for left tackle, right tackle, just tackle in general upgrades, I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen or not. So here's to hoping, fingers crossed, that the tackles that we already have on the roster, Trenton Scott, Cornelius Lucas, Brandon Coleman, Andrew Wiley, et cetera, here's to hoping, fingers crossed, that those guys pan out and they can find 2 quality starters out of that mix, and we can move forward with that. That's what we probably have to hope for at this point. If you're looking for a David Bakhtiari to be signed, bless your heart. If you're looking for them to go after a former Arizona Cardinal tackle, maybe they do that, if he's still available. I don't think I've seen him signed anywhere. But he's coming off of an injury just like David Bakhtiari is. So you always got to be careful with guys. DJ Humphries is who I'm referring to. You got to be careful with those type of guys because they're coming off of injury. So I think they are comfortable right now, but they haven't seen the pads on. So they're as comfortable as they can be with the situation being what it is. Ultimately, once they put the pads on, they'll be able to assess where we are. And if they don't like what they see, they're going to do something. Let's hope that we don't get to that point. That's my hope, right? Anyway, I digress. So let's get to the comment section. I don't want to hold you up here much longer than I need to. So Antoine Hoskins writes, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Antoine writes, do you think we can win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years? It's impossible to say yes or no right now because that is all hinged upon the quarterback position. If Jaden Daniels proves to us immediately, without a shadow of a doubt, that he is the guy, yeah, we can win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. Obviously, it's going to take some things on our part to upgrade the roster. Guys that we drafted in the first and the second and even the third round are going to have to pan out for us. We're going to have to build a strong roster around Jaden Daniels, which includes fortifying the offensive line. If that all takes place, absolutely, this team could win something big and meaningful. But let's not skip steps. You're talking about winning the Super Bowl. How about let's just make the playoffs 2 years in a row? Let's set reasonable and attainable goals first, and then we can start talking about the ultimate prize, right? Let's just start with, hey, can we win 10 games 2 years in a row? Can we win more than 10 games in a single season? Can we make the playoffs twice in a row? Like, can we win our division with an actual, real, respectable record? Can we win games in the division consistently? Let's just work on those things first. And as you hit those smaller goals, it'll lead to the ultimate goal that you're after. And so I can't tell you that we can win a Super Bowl in 5 years because we don't even know if Jaden Daniels is any good. If he is good, that's going to give us a great opportunity, especially in his rookie season window, which is the best opportunity that you have for a team to win a Super Bowl with a quarterback. If he proves like CJ Stroud did last year, and then you can go all in like the Texans have, which is why they traded for Stephon Diggs, which is why they signed Danielle Hunter, which is why they've gone all in essentially. They can because they're not paying CJ Stroud any money now, and they won't be for the next 3 years. So they hit the jackpot because now they feel like we got our guy, we got talent, we drafted guys in the last couple of years that have been really good. Now we can add talent around him, and we can go after something. If Jaden Daniels shows us that in his rookie season, we may be able to do the same, right? I don't think we're in the same spot as the Texans. I've been very adamant about that. A lot of you want to parallel our situation with the Texans, and I've been telling you guys, they were building for 2 years prior to CJ Stroud being drafted. So they had already started to accumulate guys that would ultimately be a part of that nucleus of that rookie season for CJ Stroud that actually was a tremendous success and a surprise to many, most, if not all, right? That's not where we are. And we have a lot more work to do from a roster standpoint than they did. They already have a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type left tackle. We don't have that, right? They already went out and drafted these players, corners and edge rushers, and they defensive linemen, and they had done all these things, offensive linemen for that matter. They had already gone out, gotten a tight end, and they drafted receivers, and Nico Collins was already there. And I know some people are, Nico Collins wasn't shit until last year. Fine. Well, they just extended Nico Collins and gave him good money. Why? Because he played his ass off last year. He wouldn't have been able to do that in year 1, 2, or 3 for that matter. Well, 1 or 2, because he wasn't ready. But he was ready in year 3, and then CJ Stroud shows up, and you saw what happened, right? So when you already are building, you put yourself in a position to strike. We're not there yet. Not in my mind's eye yet. So I think some things have to fall into place for us. We got to hit on some guys. I talked about this last week on the show when I said, is it paramount for those day 1 and 2 guys to be success, for us to have the type of season that we ultimately would love to see this team have? I think the answer is a resounding yes. You need Brandon Coleman to work out in some way, shape, or form, whether that's guard or tackle. You would prefer to be tackle, but you need him to work out. You need Luke McCaffrey to be a good option for us, probably the third best option on this team, because you really need Jahan Dotson to step up as a 1A, 1B, or at least the number 2, right? And then you definitely need to see something out of the second rounders, right? Johnny Newton and Mike Sainristil and Ben Sinnott. And obviously Jaden Daniels has to work or none of this works. So we got to start hitting on these guys. These are picks that we failed on, not just with the last regime, but before. We going back to 2000 and 8. We failed at second round picks. Like the last solid second round pick is Sam Cosmi. Like, that's the kind of time we've been on. We've gone through the Trent Murphys and the Ryan Andersons and we can keep going on and on, the Darius Geises, and like we failed in the second round department over and over and over and over and over and over. Sua Cravens and over and over and over. And we got to finally start hitting on some of these guys. We got 3 of them. We need to hit on them, right? So we'll see. Will Diggs, been a member for 20 months. Really appreciate you. Will Diggs writes, Brandon McManus, a freaky ninja, a 69 guy. To quote K-Dot, right? Yeah, I don't know what he is or what he isn't. I can tell you what he is. A free agent. I can tell you what he isn't. A Washington Commander. I can't tell you that, right? He has nobody to blame but himself. Whether he did anything wrong or not, he put himself in a position. There are a lot of Jaguar players on that plane. I don't hear any of the other ones being brought up in a civil suit to be, sued with the Jacksonville Jaguars organization as a whole. So you can say what you want, but he put himself in a position to be sued, to be brought up into and drug into a situation that does not, put him and cast him in a favorable light. And now he's out of work. And this could be it for him. Keep in mind, he's no spring chicken as a kicker. Spent a ton of years in Denver, was with Jacksonville the last year or two, and now he's getting another chance to kind of revitalize his career and maybe find a permanent home. And so, look, this thing may ultimately blow over. He may sit out a year and then come back next year and get work. But as of right now, his career is kind of teetering. He may end up having to kick in the UFL, right? And to keep his football career alive. We'll see what happens, but he put himself in a pretty tough spot. But I can't tell you what he is or what he isn't. I can tell you he's no longer a member of the Washington Commanders, and he is a free agent. I can't tell you that. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Lou, man, they are not messing around with any sexual assault allegations, especially after what happened with Snyder. What I won't do is act like the last group wouldn't have. The last group would have acted even faster. They would have, because there was no margin for error because of Snyder. They would have had to cut him soon as this came out. So I don't want to sit here and act as if the last group would have just sat on their hands and been like, well, let's just let the process play itself out. No, they wouldn't have done that. They would have cut him immediately. He's a kicker. They would have cut him and went on about their business. What I will also say, the last group would have brought in kickers immediately. They would have signed one, and they would have gotten rid of McManus just like that, right? That would have happened last week. There would not have been a week between them, talking about McManus and them, getting rid of him and signing a new kicker. He would have been cut within 24 hours of that news breaking, okay? So the last group would have been even more rapid in their response to this because there was no margin of error with Dan Snyder as your owner and sexual, assault and abuse and misconduct allegations being lobbied all around. You can't afford to have that associated and tied to your organization. And while we're not completely out of those waters yet, people still associate some of those things with us. They know it's a new group. And so you're able to get the benefit of the doubt. And this group took advantage of that. And they didn't just, and I love the fact that they said, hey, let's gather all the information and the intel that we need to make an informative decision because, sometimes people lie, right? Like you don't want to, I don't like calling people liars, and I don't like to question the accused. That will happen formally in the court of law. Hopefully everything gets sorted out there, but it's a lot. You have to prove a lot less of a case. Like the burden of proof is a lot less in a civil court case than it is in a criminal, right? It's one thing to take money out of your pocket, which is why it's a lot less. Oh, I have so much trauma and I have so much psychological damage. Well, it's not hard. It's not easy to prove that someone has psychological damage. It's not hard to sue for that, right? Oh, I've had so much stress come on to me because of this situation. I can no longer work in that environment. Like you can, bring all these things, up, and who am I to tell you that you're lying about this or that this isn't true? So if he's found guilty in civil court or he has to pay, right? That almost acts as an admission of guilt, even if he isn't proven actually guilty of anything from a criminal standpoint. So Washington looked at the situation, said, there's no way we can win here if we hold on to this guy, and he's not worth it. So we're going to go ahead and cut our losses and move on from him. The last group would have cut him immediately without even figuring out had he done anything wrong, because they just weren't in a position to hold on to a guy with the situation being what it was, if that makes any sense. So I don't want to make it seem like this group was so proactive as opposed to the last group who wouldn't have done anything. No. The last group would have cut him immediately, and they would have asked questions later, and they would have signed a guy, and they would have moved on because they didn't have a choice. This group had a choice, and they made a calculated one. They did not rush. They took their time. They looked at the situation. They assessed it, and they asked themselves, is this going to get better before it gets worse, or is this going to get worse before it gets better? And in their mind's eye, this is going to get worse before it gets better, okay? This is going to get worse before it gets better, and we don't want to be a part of it. When they start throwing around Brandon McManus's name with sexual assault accusations, what they don't want is for it to say Washington Commanders kicker. We don't want that, right? We don't even want former Washington Commanders kicker because he didn't even kick here. So if you cut him fast enough, they'll go former NFL kicker or former Jacksonville Jaguars kicker, because that's the last place he kicked, or former longtime veteran Denver Broncos kicker Brandon McManus. That's what you want. You don't want your organization tied to a guy with those kinds of accusations, knowing the history of your organization with its last owner. You just want to part ways with that kind of negative publicity, which is what they've done a good job of doing this offseason, and they want to continue that, and that's part of the reason why I think they went ahead and moved on from Brandon McManus. Ed B, been a member for 33 months. Ed B writes, kickers. We talking about kickers. Kickers. Yeah. Unfortunately, Ed B, yeah, we're talking about kickers, man. For those of you who are just getting in here, Washington signed Ramiz Ahmed, kicker from the USFL / UFL. Those are the two places where he had, brief stints, most notably the USFL back in 2022, where he made a 61-yard field goal. He also had a brief cup of tea in the NFL, two different stints, one with the Chicago Bears in camp, competing with Eddie Pinheiro back in 2020, did not win that battle and was cut. And then back in 2022, he was with the Green Bay Packers, primarily on their practice squad. But when he was elevated in a role of a kickoff specialist because he has a big leg. Again, the 61-yard field goal kind of illustrates that. So Washington signed Ramiz Ahmed today. He will have an opportunity to solidify himself as the kicker here. I think they're going to bring in more competition as we get deeper into the summer, into training camp, etc. Teams start to release some of the guys that they have that are extra kickers. I think you'll see Washington scouring the free agent wave and waiver wire rather, and I think you'll see them add a kicker down the road to compete with him, and then they'll see who the better of the two are, and they'll go into the season with a kicker that we might not be all that 100, all that comfortable with, but we'll just have to see what the results ultimately end up being. For those of you interested, make sure that you're checking out the LTN Lifestyle presents the Dominican Republic trip. Shout out to all of you who have signed up. Really excited about that trip and all of the things that we're going to be able to get into. As I've mentioned before, this first trip is going to be probably one of the better ones. Obviously you want to get better each and every single year, but there are going to be things that we do on this trip. I know from my standpoint, it's going to be things that I do on this first trip that I won't do on any other trip, because the first one is kind of the tone setter. You want to make sure that, I know there will be some conversations that we will have that I won't have on any other trip. Like this kind of information you'll only get on this first trip, out of me at least. I can't speak for anyone else. So we're going to have a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to chopping it up and kicking it with you guys. So if you're interested in going on the trip next June 26th through the 30th, the link is in the description of this video. Mods, if you're out there, put the link in the chat right now. I will also make sure I pin that link to the comment section of this video. And if you have any questions, you know how to get at me, LouieTeeNetwork@gmail.com. You can DM me on Twitter. You can hit me up in the comment section of any of the videos. I see the comments. So there's various ways to get at me if you have any questions about signing up or anything of that nature. So looking forward to chopping it up with those of you who have already signed up, and looking forward to seeing more of you sign up as we embark upon our first trip together. Hopefully the first of many to come. But in any event, yeah, Ed B, we're talking about kickers. And again, I said this earlier in the show, kicker is going to be an important position for us because we don't score a lot of points. And I'm not sure that that's going to change all that much with Cliff Kingsbury this year. We'd like to hope, but I'm not going to do that thing that I've done the last 2 years where, last year with Eric Bieniemy and the year before that, thinking Carson Wentz was going to help elevate the offense. I'm not doing that this year. I'm just going to take a wait and see approach. Until somebody comes in here and shows that we can score 24, 25 points a game, I'm just going to assume that we'll be hovering around 20 or less than 20 points a game until somebody shows me that that's not our life anymore, that that's behind us and we're a new team and this is all different. I'm just going to assume that the defense is going to have to carry the day until otherwise notified. So if that's the case, then we're going to need the kicker to make kicks. We're not the Chiefs. We're not the Ravens. We're not the Dolphins. We're not scoring 38 and 33 and 36 every week. We need our points. All of them, extra points included. We need all our points. So kicker is important. Kicker is definitely important. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. I thank you guys for joining me. I told you I didn't want to talk your head off. We will be live tomorrow night. Obviously, OTAs kick back up tomorrow. We'll hear from Dan Quinn, among others. I expect to hear from some players. I hope we hear from defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. this week, because we already heard from Cliff Kingsbury. We hear from Dan Quinn, as we should every week that we have OTAs. We've heard from various players. I expect us to hear from a number of players again. But I hope they make Joe Witt Jr. available. Haven't heard from him since his introductory press conference. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him. Since we heard from Cliff Kingsbury, I assume they're going to make the defensive coordinator available this go-round. Maybe if not this go-round, the next one with the mandatory, the final one before we head off to that little break between June and July. We'll see. I'm looking forward to hearing from him, though. Hearing how he feels about some of the guys that are out there, what he's seen in some of the new acquisitions, the young guys, how they move, how they think he'll fit, how he feels about Emmanuel Forbes. I don't know if we'll get any of that information or intel, but it'd be nice to hear from him and see how he feels about some of those guys, because ultimately it's going to be their development and his usage of those players that's ultimately going to help this defense get to what I think is going to be the strongest unit of this football team. But again, we'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how he feels about the talent that's been acquired. But I'd like to think that he thinks very highly of Mike Sandwich still and some of the guys that they've added. But how does he feel about some of the guys that were already here, right? Guess we'll find out more about that as time passes. I'd love to hear from him this week, see if that happens. But we definitely are hearing from head coach Dan Quinn. Obviously, he'll have to answer questions about Brandon McManus and the decision to move on from him. That'll be among the topics that we'll talk about tomorrow night on our big show. I want to make sure I knock that out prior to Thursday because NBA Finals kickoff. I don't want to step on their toes, and I definitely don't want the NBA Finals stepping on my toes with their ginormous feet. So I'm going to get in on Wednesday night, the last day before the finals, so you can watch that in peace without any interruptions. So I will see you guys tomorrow night. I look forward to chopping it up with you. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. Look forward to chopping it up with you. I will be live tonight at some point for a LouieTeeNetwork podcast episode. So if you aren't doing anything and you want to lock in for that, please, by all means, jump on live with me. With Justin Jefferson got a massive contract. CeeDee Lamb's not at Cowboys OTAs. We know these are all formalities. He's going to get a deal. Should anybody exceed Justin Jefferson's 4-year, $140 million extension? We'll talk about that among other topics tonight on the show. Should be a lot of fun. Hopefully you can join me for that. In any event, I'm out of here. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully you'll be able to join me later on tonight. If you haven't already done so, please hit the like button. Over 300 of you out there, only 100 likes. Hit the like button on the way out. Help the kid out. I truly do appreciate that. Until next time, you guys know what it is. God bless. Good night.